We all want the best for our children. And as adults, we have the inherent responsibility to make sure our children are receiving the best care we can offer them. That's why it's crucial to make sure your children have the vaccinations they need. In this video, we hope that we can provide the necessary tools parents need to get their kids vaccinated, or at the very least, be more informed about vaccinations and the disease in focus: polio. For those of us unfamiliar with the disease, polio, or poliomyelitis, is a highly infectious viral disease which enters the body through the mouth.
Polio is an enterovirus, which basically means it's a kind of virus that you can pass person to person. Polio can go on to cause some very, very serious side effects. And one of the things that we have to think about is that at one point it was a huge community scare.
My name is Steve Scherer, and I'm 82 years old, and when I was 16, I had polio. I played a football game for my high school on a Friday afternoon, and I went out hunting. While I was hunting, I got in bad pain in my legs and my back. My muscles were contracting uncontrollably. They called an ambulance and took me to the Syracuse, New York Contagious Hospital.
Once contracted, a victim of polio could display a myriad of symptoms, including loss of reflexes, severe muscle aches and spasms, paralysis of the spine and/or brainstem, encephalitis, progressive muscle and joint weakness and pain, and in some cases, even death. However, the vast majority of people who are affected with the polio virus don't show any symptoms, never become sick, and don't even know that they have contracted this potentially deadly virus.
I looked up on the American Pediatric Association, all of their recommendations. From that research, I decided that it was best to have him immunized as opposed to not.
My children are 14, 7, and 4. The 14-year-old is fully immunized. The 7-year-old has had a few select ones, and the 4-year-old has had none. We chose to not immunize Hayden on schedule with everything that they were asking of us based on me doing more research as a parent. I felt like I needed to make a more informed decision.
Another thing is that at one point, the polio vaccine was a live vaccine, and one of the opt-outs was because if there was a rare genetic anomaly where the infant was immune compromised, it could lead to polio-like symptoms. But now the vaccine is actually inactivated, and there's no way you can get polio from the vaccine.
There are no concerns.
None, not really, no.
Especially since...
More concerning not to get it than to get it.
The polio vaccine is not a live virus, and I am aware of that, but I didn't feel like the good outweighed the bad as far as how many chemicals and preservatives were included in the vaccine.
I'll be honest with you, I think the reasons are more personal or possibly political, but I don't see a medical reason why they should opt out.
For over a millennium, polio survived as an endemic pathogen until the 1880s, when epidemics worked their way from Europe to the United States and eventually throughout the world. At its height during the 1940s and 1950s, polio was taking the lives of 500,000 people every year. People suffering from the severe effects lived in iron lungs, which circulated blood and oxygen through the body when the muscles became too weak in the heart and lungs.
The polio virus destroys the motor nerves, or some of the motor nerves in the spinal column. When it really is serious is when the motor nerves that control the breathing apparatus are destroyed, and that's when young people, end up in iron lungs, which breathe for them. It took out my right leg, and then it began to weaken the muscles in my stomach and my back, and ultimately I gained back most of the strength in my good leg, and I was left only with total paralysis in my right leg.
It wasn't until 1955 when the polio vaccine was introduced and the number of outbreaks started to drop.
It's hard to imagine, but there was a time in our community where polio was a seasonal event. There would be outbreaks in public pools, in schools, daycares. It wasn't until the polio vaccine that there was a feeling that we could have safe get-togethers again with our kids. There was also a time when the vaccine first came out that people would line up around the block to get their kids vaccinated. We don't see that as much anymore.
Because of the efforts of multinational organizations such as Rotary, the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the amount of people infected with polio has been rapidly decreasing over the past 30 years.
The reason we are not having polio outbreaks in the United States is because the amazing effort in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all the way through to now with the vaccine against polio. Is what we call herd immunity, which means that there are so many people that are immunized that if somebody isn't immunized, they're protected by the people around them.
Unfortunately, Sonoma County has one of the lowest immunization rates in the country.
For that particular vaccine, we chose to not give it because it's not something that is of a huge concern to me living here in the United States.
The issue, though, is that there are more and more pockets of people who are choosing not to immunize, and that herd immunity strategy is starting to break down. Then you get somebody who comes from a different country, a plane ride from Pakistan, a plane ride from Africa. There's been somebody who even came from South America who is infected with polio, comes into our community, and without that sense of herd protection, it can just spread like a domino effect.
Now, one of the decisions that we did make as parents, my husband, he's Filipino, and we chose that if we did decide to not do the vaccines right away, that if we traveled, we would go ahead and do things like that, depending on what country we're traveling to. But I didn't feel like living in the United States, he was in as much danger.
It's the exact same as if you give your child the flu shot. The things you watch for fever, redness, rash at the spot, swelling, and those are all normal side effects. There's nothing severe that you should be afraid of. Definitely not autism. So I think that it's a well-rounded shot. It's not going to do much except for protect you.
Most of the rumors about the side effects of immunization is not just rumors. There's not really any concrete proof that it's going to do most anything bad, and if not, you're protecting yourself from something much worse. So.
Since the introduction of the End Polio Now campaign in 1979, Rotary reduced polio cases by 99% worldwide. Overseas, the vaccination comes in the form of a liquid drop that is placed on the child's tongue. After this 60-cent vaccination is administered, the child's pinky is painted purple to indicate they have received the treatment. Today, polio is most prevalent in Afghanistan, Nigeria, Pakistan, and most recently, an outbreak now in Syria. This outbreak is a devastating yet important example of why we need to continue to vaccinate our children.
Think about it this way. In my grandmother's time, there were things like smallpox, diphtheria, and diseases that we don't even know today. But because they found a cure, or at least a preventive, my grandmother, grandfather, father, mother had vaccines. The result of that is those diseases are never seen. Today, there is a way to avoid measles, mumps, polio, for example, as well as many of the other diseases by simply immunizing a youngster so they're no longer in danger of that happening to them.
The most important thing is to immunize. If you don't immunize, you don't have protection. And it's very simple. Just when you're at your well baby visit, get the polio vaccine.
Unfortunately, the vast majority do not know about polio because they think it's been eradicated. Many parents are opting out of the vaccination, putting their children at risk for contamination. What parents don't know is how easy it is for their child to contract this disease. It would only take one carrier to spread polio to every non-immunized person. Just because polio has been eliminated from the US, that doesn't mean it's not a threat. It's only a plane ride away. We may have won the battle in our own backyard, but we have yet to win the war. And we're this close to ending polio. Now that you've seen this video, we hope that you are better informed about the polio virus. With your help, we can raise the immunization rate by passing the knowledge on to others, getting your children immunized, or by donating to the cause at endpolio.org.